Last time we met, viewers, we discussed how the original game F.E.A.R was the long-lost twin of revolutionary PC shooter Half-Life, from its health bars, to the level design, all the way down to the bilges, with the decision to release 2 expansion packs to the original game that would in some way tie together this horribly presented plot that you need bionic hearing to understand who the hell this naked psychic chick is that nuked half the town. Unlike the original Half-Life, I have zero clue about the game's expansions, other than I believe there was 2 of them only, Blue Shift and Opposing Force. And as copy-paste as Monolith was to the grand young Valve, they created Extraction Point and Perseus Mandate. Basically, they're extra chapters made a short time after the game. Since these are horror shooter expansion packs at points, this does remind me of the Dead Space 3 Aftermath pack. But instead of coming out a solitary month after the original game, Monolith dug out some time from its busy schedule to slot it out an entire year after its original release. However, they also fobbed the job off to a different company altogether, TimeGate, the developer behind some Kohan games and one of the 15 developers behind the disastrous Colonial Marines. To be fair to TimeGate, the major developer on these projects, both expansions do have a distinct feel away from the original, but it does look like Monolith was advising on these projects since they capture a lot of the original tone, the story ideas, and the mechanics of the original game. And since both expansions came out on the 360 compilation disc F.E.A.R files, I decided to take both of these level packs out in the same shot, mostly because they are that similar to each other and it would be really boring for me to do 2 videos on what's essentially the same thing. I'm gonna start with Extraction Point since that's the one I would recommend playing immediately after F.E.A.R, since it sets up some more plot points after the original, and that's because the expansion pack starts during the helicopter escape from the Armacam vault from the original release. And because it's in a helicopter in a video game, it had as much chance as finishing its mission than a bag of Doritos has to finish a frat party. The team goes down in the city and gets almost immediately split up in the city, suffering from the outbreak of Alma's psychic weirdness that resulted in this pack getting the better end of the stick. Since Alma's free to do whatever the hell she wants and Paxton Fettel somehow gets on his feet in such a deus ex machina manner that even he himself has no clue how it happened.
I know it doesn't make sense. Not much does anymore. You killed me. I didn't like that.
So you're up for quite a wild time here. The horror aspects are levered very heavily in this expansion. Alma's wandering around still in a meandering fashion so you barely meet her personally. Paxton's appearance reawakened the clone soldiers, so there's fun to be had there. And then there's the introduction of some odd psychic children and murder squads that seem to be coming out of the freaking ductwork at this point. The mission for Point Man is simple and slapped right on the label. Get to the extraction point. It's at a local hospital since they apparently have the only helipad in the city, and thanks to movie magic, all of the F.E.A.R allies have made it there before your dopey ass. So if you felt that F.E.A.R ended kinda early and wanted another 3 hours of content to that game, then this game is gonna be the perfect one for you. The gameplay balancing is really shit compared to the original. I ended the first chapter filled up to full health packs, and by the end I was bleeding my way from pack to pack like this was Dead Space 2 proper. It's an annoying way to make a horror game because TimeGate will just dole out 3 health packs to you all at once and then have these giant gaps where you hit 0 resources. And that doesn't exactly help when you find yourself faced up with these new combat robots that look like they came straight from an 80s movie and will knock your ass to the ground after it Kool-Aid Mans through 3 consecutive walls. It truly is deserving of the name Leviathan because that shit is off the walls. Beyond that, the combat's pretty much the same guns and the same enemies as the original. I can't really tell if the actual environments were directly stolen from F.E.A.R to save time, since every location in that game looks the damn same just to show off more of its Half-Life roots, in placing the entire game in the same damn brown corridors and some human-sized HVAC. It makes sense in a way since the game is taking place in the exact same location as the original game's level design, but what doesn't make sense is that the whole layout of the city is completely bonkers. I remember the one point I was told to escape a subway station into a sewer, and ended up going up 3 floors to get there, and then it directly connects to the hospital? The problem with this game is that you can never tell where you are because the levels are so seamlessly drawn together. You could be in the sewer, traverse back to the subway, and then jump into a church without ever even knowing where any of them are. And almost dimensional hopping tricks don't exactly help this, and it makes the game feel like it's taking place in the Evil Within, where any second you'll just be dropped from one nightmare to the next with no logical reason between them. That's at least one thing the game is good at, is keeping some tension ratcheted up throughout the entire run. At one point in the holiday level of this game where you finally get an AI ally to help you through the fighting through a construction site, and after gunning and sniping your way through an entire replica horde, Holiday rendezvous with Point Man for a bit of a palaver, and then gets murdered the fuck out by the unseen psychic hands of Alma's murder children, loosed on the city of Whereverville, and I mean like legitimately mauled to death, pasted by the unseen hands of these psychic zombies. It reminds me of the time from Silent Hill where Harry Mason saw the upbeat and quote-unquote pure Lisa melt from the other Hill's influence right in front of him as she reached out for his help, and he just ran away. Somehow, beyond all common sense and logic, Point Man survives both the psychic grasp of Alma tightening the town to the point of madness, to make it to the hospital where the female ally seems to be in desperation for her life, but she seems more annoyed that everyone died on the way to the hospital. Yeah, somehow the voice acting for Extraction Point had gotten worse from the original F.E.A.R. The main characters sound like they give zero shits and seem annoyed at everything Point Man does.
Oh god, they're dead. They're all dead.
And then there's the fun phone messages that appear maybe 3 times in Extraction Point's 3-hour runs, and they, well, let's just say they weren't the first thing that TimeGate was writing on the project.
Jenny, it's John. Stay where you are. I'm coming to you.
There seems to be a lesser replica force at the hospital, and it's mainly Alma's turn to get in on the fun of dragging Point Man to some sort of unknown destiny. This being a hospital, let's just say Alma has a bit of a grudge against the location itself, and that makes this one of the centers of the insane psychic singularity in the city. Since it was obvious, the location ends with the female ally dying off screen and in the maternity ward. The ward blinks in and out of existence with some sort of old-timey hospital that I have no recollection of. It's an odd move for TimeGate to make along with the revelation that made no sense. It kinda looks like Alma Current and Alma Past are trying to form together to gain more power and influence or something. Paxton Fettel keeps telling Point Man that he's trying to run from dealing with this family's past, and can you not agree with him? Look at what happened in Whereverville. The whole point is to evacuate, and after getting that revelation in the morgue, F.E.A.R. finally arrives with an evac chopper to bring Point Man home. This being a helicopter in a video game, you knew the plan was bullshit ever since the clip started. It's such a left turn for video games that the helicopter never even got off the ground before it got blasted into pieces, canonically leaving Point Man trapped in the middle of the psychic singularity and Paxton Fettel's troops just waiting for his brutal mauling. Extraction Point was the better expansion pack, bringing forth more of the horror and less of the combat, and letting players get hooked on the better parts of Monolith's original idea. The pack continues the plot of the original game just like Dead Space 3 Aftermath did, and leaves the series in a perfect place for F.E.A.R. 2 to start in an interesting spot. But since I just spoiled the second half of this disc, let's talk about Perseus Mandate, the game with the title that it couldn't back up. Instead of even bothering with the original plot of the game, Perseus Mandate takes the series in a new direction and just sends in another F.E.A.R. group to work alongside the original F.E.A.R. group's attempts to capture Paxton Fettel by unwittingly sending in a second set of dudes to do the exact same thing, since Perseus, the project thereafter, is Paxton Fettel. So, let me get this straight. Not only is F.E.A.R.'s purpose completely ridiculous, they're also incompetent in making it happen. I get that the Perseus project is incredibly important to F.E.A.R., but seriously, this was dumb. Even dumber was the introduction of Perseus Mandate's main antagonist, the Nightcrawler Corporation. a paramilitary group of horribly skilled agents tasked with picking up the Perseus Project data under command by Gavin Morrison, some sort of lapdog to a senator who wants to build his own Weyland-Yutani group on the ashes of the now destroyed Armacam, probably even employing that Genevieve character along with the formation now that Alma has been killed, but not really. This expansion takes place directly alongside both the original F.E.A.R and F.E.A.R extraction points, and that was an interesting move to take, since the players would have gotten to experience a different perspective on the intriguing original idea, which would have been the game's selling point. Unfortunately, TimeGate went for a lazier route, stuffing a lot of this pack with copy-paste combat and even more unbalanced difficulty, which led me to spending, I'd say, 45% of the game with full health packs until you hit the sections where you just shoot through all of them at once, since TimeGate doesn't know what it's doing in making a first-person shooter. The point where you're fighting a Leviathan in the office building is the most bullshit, since you have to run past it in this confusing-ass labyrinth of a building to find the gun with a good chance of killing it after starting this fight with no resources. Probably. I will grudgingly admit the level design is getting better since TimeGate spent so much more time making this an 8-chapter masterpiece in comparison to Extraction Point's brilliant fight. The levels are more distinct and you can mostly tell where you're going and what levels you're currently in. TimeGate added the phone messages and PC data back into the game to tell the player more about what's going on with the pursuits of the Perseus Project, but all of those positive points get shoved straight into the corner with the ultimate reason why Perseus Mandate is a waste of time expansion. It's slow and boring. In comparison to Extraction Point's 3-hour runtime, Perseus Mandate takes at least 4, and in this pack, the psychic appearances of Alma's singularity are taking a backseat to TimeGate's highlighting of their Nightcrawler combat against an enemy that's a fusion of the replica soldier and the ninja to make an incredibly bullshit, agile enemy who wields impressive firepower and grenades so tiny that they should be reclassed as invisible. They have elite versions of themselves which are so horrible that the game gives you an achievement just for killing the first one in this whole game. On top of the normal Nightcrawler abilities, they have additional armor and health and will mostly come out in pairs to ruin your days. The issue is that since this pack is about chasing a person and not a place, you have really no idea about where it's going to end, and a couple of the chapters are spent shooting a succession of the same Nightcrawler dudes over and over again to the point that you can put together a murder conveyor belt system. Personally, that's when my care cup was thrown out the window. You can't make killing the same dude 100 times in a row interesting. It's not challenging anymore. I know the attacks, I know the AI, I know what they're gonna do. I just don't care anymore. It's been 3 hours already, TimeGate. For the love of God, just end. So anyway, TimeGate decided to backseat the Alma and Paxton stuff in favor for this PMC storyline and race the Armacam tech that we know nothing about. They bring up project names like Origin, Perseus, and this other one, Synchronicity, and then they toss the whole plot out the window. The expansion tried to take Synchronicity seriously and make it this huge MacGuffin, but then never brings it up again after it was first mentioned. Ugh, it's just a big flippin' mess. It's like MGS5 all over again. And it's kind of a shame it was, since if the idea for Perseus Mandate was interesting, then the good voice acting could have actually saved it. The second F.E.A.R group is the better of the two groups of characters. They're more solid, they're more interesting. I don't know anything about them or their names, yet their gruff, serious scripting would play the perfect straight man against some actual horror set pieces. Plus, there's this one guy who I'd love to give a tip of the hat to for great voice acting, but since I don't know their names, I do know this. He has one of the best tough guy one-liners I've ever heard in a video game.
You have no idea who you're dealing with.
I don't care.
God damn, that was perfect! It's a true shame that the guy got ultra-murdered by Alma's hit squad soon after the nuke was deployed, leaving the F.E.A.R group scattered underground and Morrison lost. F.E.A.R needs to get that Perseus data first, obviously, but not before making his way through the old city by himself. Now you know, that thing happened. It go through a bit more of the good horror that F.E.A.R dishes out in this level, and on his way to the Armacam facility, stuffed butt to gut with more nightcrawlers than you can shake a stick at. I would talk more about this expansion in detail, but you just need to realize, viewer, just take it from me, that most of this is just generic shootouts tied together with corridors and air duct adventures, which would have been better if TimeGate weren't terrible at level design sometimes, because trying to find these goddamn vents is so impossible that at one point, I gave up and had to Google my way forward after fighting a completely dick-headed armored soldier. And that's the point where you know that you royally fucked up. And don't blame me, look at this damn thing. They put the air duct on the top of a pile of nondescript garbage. How was anyone supposed to find that bastard? TimeGate had so many opportunities to bring back what people liked about F.E.A.R's horror, but Perseus Mandate instead ended up with less than the original F.E.A.R and just beating down your patience with non-stop combat with faceless dudes. However, if you can still stomach it, you'll make it down to the Armacam vault again and pick up the Perseus data after a confrontation with the Nightcrawler commander. And let me tell ya, that was the pinnacle of this game's difficult bullshit. The first reason is that their explosives and explosive weapons can take out 40 HP in one shot, and there are a lot of shots in this game. After that, you'll survive a few more waves of clone dudes and make it to the helicopter rescue that'll get your ass out of this boring and shitty mess. I am totally surprised that I'm about to say this, but Infinite Warfare had me more entertained as an interactive story, because at least that one doesn't force you to chew through resources just to move forward when you're spending more than half the game drowning in the damn things. There was nothing, absolutely nothing Perseus Mandate could have done to justify its existence to me after the halfway point. This expansion is 8 chapters long, with 2 of the chapters being generic A to B journey missions with no idea of the final destination. The game takes forever, and there's no reward for beating the game's plot line other than a completely generic first-person shooter that you can get anywhere else. The Nightcrawler Corporation was the awful idea by TimeGate to use as an antagonist replacement for Alma's psychic stranglehold. It's interesting to see the times that Alma murders our enemies just to pave the way for Point Man 1 and 2 to get to where she wants them. It would have been better if we'd known why she wanted us there, but I can't imagine Armacam went to great lengths to actually educate her, so I don't know. What I do know is that I can only recommend the Perseus Mandate to people who are psychotically into F.E.A.R as a series and need absolutely all of the series content to be happy. If you're a casual fan of it, then don't even bother. I had more fun playing Ico, or Infinite Warfare, or Halo 3 ODST than this bizarre, unbalanced mess of a game that overstays its welcome by more than an hour, with all of the horror-based goodwill replaced by a boring-ass plot of second group of operatives being sent in to not complete the job of the first F.E.A.R group. Yeah, Perseus Mandate had a couple nice moments, especially when Point Man 2 tried to save his good friend from one of the floor masters, but that was done better by Holiday's death in Extraction Point. It was more gruesome, terrifying, voice acted, and animated than Man Number 2's death scene, and that's why I would tell people to buy F.E.A.R files for Extraction Point, since that one is exactly the type of thing people were thinking about when expansion packs were first invented. Additional content to round out the game's plot and give players more of what they liked from the original release. The horror is amped up to great tension, the combat's a bit more laid back, and even though we don't learn the exact plans of Alma and Paxton and why Point Man is involved in them, it delivers on everything else you want from the series. An edge-of-seat thrill ride of a game that adds a solid 3 hours to a promising title. So, that's that. The extra content of F.E.A.R is out of the way, and now I can focus on getting to the sequel that I believe is trying to do a prequel of the original type thing. I hope it actually doesn't, since Point Man's adventures in Whereverville are far more interesting to me as a reader of the game's plot at this point. We'll see later, but for now, I'll leave you guys with a double scoreboard for both packs, just to be completely fair. And Oh, can't forget the victory for gamers. Man, I would lose my head if Alma didn't already rip it off my bloody neck stump. I'll see you guys next time.